and germs. We finally got the local horror fan back. He's been in prison for slashing people. But ironically, that's the title of today's video.
Top 5 slasher movies of
Top
all
5
time.
slasher movies. These are our favorite slasher movies. So remember that. This is our favorites and this is our opinion. These are the ones that we just think are incredible movies.
Yeah.
That's really all there needs to say about it.
And you'll have your own top 5, I'm sure.
And we can't wait to see your list. What's going to be great about this list, Kaylin, is, you know, unlike the top 5s of the years, there's usually like a centralized couple of movies. But for this, I think it's going to be just a potluck in the comment section, you know, because slasher movies are very hit and miss, no pun intended, with the fans. I don't want this to sound bad, but I am excluding Nightmare on Elm Street films because I hold them to a higher standard. I don't see them as slasher movies. I really don't. Obviously, Freddy's my king. I love my Freddy. So, you know, Freddy's not in this list, but we'll do a video about Freddy soon. But these are just everything else. Slasher movies are top 5. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump right into this. So, Kaylin, let's go off with you. And what's our number 5 for you?
My number 5 is going to be the classic slasher Psycho. I think that it wasn't the first and it wasn't the best, but it was certainly iconic, and it freaked a lot of people out. A lot of people had a hard time being in the shower alone after watching that.
Completely transformed how people lose their comfort taking showers.
Yeah, and Alfred Hitchcock, I believe, genius. The way it was shot, the shower scene. I think a lot of people agree that was classic, iconic slasher.
He was the master of manipulation. You know, you think you see so much more than what you're really seeing. And you know how many directors have homaged him with the way that the dolly shots and just the way he cuts movies and scenes is brilliant.
Just goes to show that you don't need buckets of blood.
Okay, my number 5 is a little slasher movie, I believe from 1981. I believe it was 81. It's a movie called The Burning. The Burning, man. What I really like about The Burning was, you know, first off, Cropsey is just a mean son of a gun. And what's really interesting about the movie that I like is the fact that Savini passed up doing Friday the 13th Part 2 to do this movie. Savini was not happy with the fact that Friday 2 was going to have Jason, because Savini was like, there's no Jason. You know, Jason was a dream at the end of the movie. It never happened. You know, The Burning, I got the Scream Factory. I had never seen the movie, and it's pretty brutal, and that's what I like about it. It's just a low-budget slasher movie with just the most crude of special effects, but in a positive way. Like, it's crude Savini is the best way to put it. And Cropsey is just a nasty, mean-looking sucker. My
number 4 is going to be a movie called The Strangers.
Oh, The Strangers?
Yeah, from 2006. The Strangers, it just... oh God, just such a great movie. When you talk about slasher films, still every time I watch it, it still gives me that same feeling of just, what would it feel like to take a knife to the gut, you know?
Oh yeah, the ending of that movie, and in the line, like, why are you doing this? And I think the line was, because you were home.
Yeah,
and that's just haunting.
That's real life for you.
You know, that's interesting, man. The Strangers didn't even come on my radar. I guess my brain was so stuck in the 80s, but man, the Strangers is brilliant.
Yeah, well, when you think of slashers of all time, there's so many.
Okay, my number 4. Now, Kaylin, before I say my number 4, you told me, you were like, look, man, when I do this list, mine's gonna be different, and so far yours is different, and I feel like I'm playing it more straight, but. You know, when I made a gigantic list on paper with all these movies, and I was like, Christian, now which ones would be Desert Island? And this is kind of what my list is. It's my Desert Island movies. For number 4, man, I genuinely had to put Halloween on there.
Yeah.
You know, it's more than a slasher to me. When I think of Halloween, just the word spooky comes to mind. The word spooky comes to mind so much. And Halloween to me is just atmosphere personified, but at its core, it's still a slasher movie.
Yeah.
So that's why it made the list on here, because it is a slasher movie, and quite honestly, still to this day, one of the best, because slasher movies are not supposed to just be about blood and guts. I think we all know that. Slasher movies are really supposed to be about suspense and just dread, and, you know, John Carpenter, just everything was just magic. Everything about that 28 days, I believe what they filmed it was just pure magic. And yeah, Halloween.
All right, Christian, my number 3 is going to be a movie called Hatchet.
Hatchet. Oh my goodness, your list is killer.
Victor Crowley. It's an Adam Green movie. You have Kane Hodder, as you said, and just one of my favorite horror movies. I think it's a slasher for slasher fans.
Absolutely. You know, the first time when Hatchet came out, it completely went under my radar. The scene where the scene where Victor takes the guy's head or the woman's head and just rips it wide open. Just brilliant, and that's all practical.
Yeah, and it's a Louisiana movie, shot in Louisiana.
And that's where we're from, yeah, Louisiana.
So I love that.
So there we go. All right, so my number 3, again, Kaylin is definitely curveballing y'all, but I feel like I'm kind of boring. But these are genuinely my top 5 slashers. And you know what? I went back and forth on whether I considered this movie a slasher, and at the end of the day, I was like, I think that's what it is. I'm gonna call it that, and I think this is the greatest horror movie ever made, period. That is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yep. This is a movie that, 10 years ago, if you had asked me what the greatest horror movie was, I probably would have said Halloween. And I still think Halloween is, one of the greatest horror movies ever made. But if you ask me right now what the greatest horror movie ever made is, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's just so effective. I mean, it's so absolutely effective. Genuinely, one of the most horrifying movies I've ever seen. Till this day, It doesn't matter that I can quote the movie chapter and verse. It doesn't matter that I can watch it going to sleep. Just the realism in it is just fascinating.
And if we're basing this off of slasher merits, Chainsaw.
That's what I was thinking. I was like,
killing weapon.
I was telling myself, well, Christian, like Texas Chainsaw could just literally be its own category because there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
It spawned other movies like Pieces and stuff, which was another great chainsaw horror movie. But yeah, Texas Chainsaw, I consider it the greatest horror movie of all time.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's gonna be on my number 3. But there's a few more slashers that I enjoy for the genre, so that's why it's not my number 1.
Yeah. Number 2.
Oh Lord, I'm nervous to hear his number 2.
Number 2, Sleepaway Camp.
Sleepaway Camp. Oh my goodness, this is interesting. I'm gonna let you do your. I'm gonna let you go. Why? I don't like the first Sleepaway Camp.
Well, I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, here's what I'll say real quick. Sleepaway Camp definitely has its fans. Obviously, when I did my top 5 for, I think it was 80 or 81, whatever year Sleepaway Camp came out. I put in my honorable mentions, and everybody was polite, but they were just like, no, my number 2 is Sleepaway Camp. My number 1 is Sleepaway Camp. Yeah. Whatever year it was in, I forgot. And maybe I just need to rewatch it. I don't know, but I really dig 2 and 3. Yeah. I just like those better. And there's people that are like that with me and like that later 80s type. But yeah, the first one definitely is classic. I'll give it that. There's no denying it.
Yeah, and when I think of slashers, Sleepaway Camp, the whole series of them, that comes to mind as one of the first ones. Like, that's classic slasher movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here we go, guys. My number 2. I just love talking about this movie. This is a movie I saw this year, and I consider it to be the most psychologically scarring slasher movie ever made. That is Maniac. I just think that is the most horrifying movie. Genuinely, I watched this movie with my wife. We have a treadmill in our bedroom, and it was like 9 a.m. on a Saturday. I was like, Sydney, let's watch Maniac. And she's like, okay. So she's laying in the bed just chilling with the dogs, and I'm on the treadmill on the side of the bed, and we're watching this movie, and my jaw is dropped the whole time. I don't know if you've ever seen Maniac.
No, I haven't seen it.
Genuinely, I got the lovely Blue Underground Blu-ray right here. One of the most psychologically damaging movies. When I got done, I was so affected by it. At 9 a.m. on the treadmill, I was so lost in this movie. I completely forgot I was on the treadmill power walking. I was in the shower, I couldn't blink. I mean, the movie was that effective. And it's one of the most realistic images of a serial killer I've ever seen. I said this in my review, completely beats Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Wow.
As great as that movie is, Maniac is that much more effective. And for those of you who have seen Maniac, it may not be as high in your list as mine, or if it's on your list, but I think a lot of people would agree it's one of the most damaging mental horror movies you'll ever see. And Tom Savini gets his head blown off in the movie. Right. And I will leave in the description, I'll leave an Amazon affiliate link of mine to where you can pick up the Blue Underground Blu-ray. So
most people, they watch like The View in the morning on the treadmill, the show The View, or maybe the morning news.
Or the Sharon Osbourne one, The Talk.
The Talk, but you're watching Maniac.
Yeah,
That's
so Maniac.
hardcore.
Yeah, I just love talking about Maniac. I just think it's a brilliant movie.
Well, I gotta see it. It's number 1.
This is. I am nervous. I am really nervous right now for your number 1.
It's probably no big surprise. Just on the merit of what it did to the horror genre, I picked Scream.
Really?
Scream
is your number 1.
And for me, it was just because I think horror movies just might have been getting a little stale for me at a certain point in the 90s, and Scream just picked it right up and sort of ignited a lot of movies that did that same formula
in an era, and especially in that year when CGI was coming full force. Scream did not have a drop of it.
No.
And I really appreciate that now. I really, really appreciate that now. At least I'm pretty sure it didn't have any CGI.
Not over the top like some of the other ones that came out around that time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure when Stu and Billy were blading each other, it was retractable blades. So I really don't think there was a drop of CGI in this movie.
Just practical.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I respect that. That Scream's your number 1. Brilliant movie, man. It's important. I'll say that, man. I mean, if we wouldn't have had Scream, you wouldn't have movies that we love like Urban Legend.
Sure.
You wouldn't have Valentine.
I know what you did last summer.
Which is another classic. Yeah. So I want to go on record and say, to me, when I think of the slasher movies, my number 1, this is everything that's the heart and soul of what a good slasher movie is to me. And this probably won't surprise you. My favorite slasher movie, and what I think personally is the best slasher movie ever made, and I might get flack for this, but for me, Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, is the greatest slasher movie. I genuinely think Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, is the greatest slasher movie ever made. That's my opinion. There's still slasher movies I haven't seen. My opinion can change tomorrow, but right now, everything about The Final Chapter is just like what the heart and soul of what that genre was at that moment in time. Obviously, Scream was a decade later, and that was the best of that era, But for me, dude, The Final Chapter had genuine good suspense, just an aura to it. I don't know, man. It's obviously as well. I think it's the absolute best in the franchise. You had just a brutal antagonist in Ted White's Jason. I mean, if there's one Jason you don't want to run into, it's his. I mean, just so much agony in that movie and just dread. I don't know, man. But the characters are still, you still get the comedic aspects of the characters, but it wasn't over the top. Final Chapter actually portrayed some real kids. You had the pot smoker, you had the twins, you had the jock type guys, and then you had the kid of Tommy Jarvis, and just one of my favorite characters from a horror movie. Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, to me is the greatest slasher movie, and I had to put it on my list. Now, like I said, this is, to me, Freddy is, but to me, the movies represent so much more. Freddy turns people into puppets and cuts their tendons off, and then they fall. That's I don't know. I just wanted to exclude Freddy, because he is so high. He's my king. Freddy's Nightmare on Elm Street is my favorite franchise. But slasher-wise, Final Chapter for me.
Great number 1 pick.
Do you have any more honorable mentions you wanted to hold on?
I did. My Bloody Valentine.
Oh, that was one of mine too. Yeah. And I think that one was, no pun intended, a cut above the rest. And My Bloody Valentine was great. Harry Warden. Honestly, Psycho 2 was one of mine. I just think that's one of the most bravest sequels. I mean, to do a sequel to Psycho, it's just incredible. And Psycho 2 is just, I enjoy it more than the first one, but I respect everything that the first one's done. So there it is, guys. That's our top 5 slasher movies, top 5 favorite slasher movies. Obviously, seeing the comments is going to be interesting, because I think it could be really different. Now, you guys feel free to put Nightmare on Elm Street movies in your list. We just wanted to exclude it from ours because, to me, it's just more than that. But that's not to say that you can't do it. I'd love to see what you guys' brainwaves are on this. So The local horror fan is here again.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Had a
Good to
great
see
time.
you again. And we got more videos coming, more top 5. So until next time, we'll see you guys later.